Okay, so first I promised a map of Africa last time. So um, Santiago's like up here, and he's got to get all the way over here, and that is 2,600 miles through the desert, all walking. All right, so um, it's a bit of a trek. All right, the first 10 pages though, this section, he's still with the crystal merchant, and they think of things very differently.
Hey, you're giving out spoilers. I have not read it yet.
Well, you're behind. You need to get caught up. The Crystal Merchant is a character foil. If you haven't heard of a character foil before, it's someone that is opposite of the main character that helps point out some of their personality traits. Okay? So while he's working with the Crystal Merchant, he gives ideas like, hey, we should build this display case so people can see it and want to come. Hey, we should start selling tea. And at every suggestion, the Crystal Merchant is like, I don't want to do it. All right, at first. Because the Crystal Merchant has been doing the same job for 30 years. He's used to it. He doesn't want to change. And that's the biggest difference between Santiago and the Crystal Merchant is Santiago is willing to change. The Crystal Merchant is not. Okay? If you have not done the assignment 53 to 73, listen up closely to this part. Okay, the typing question where I'm looking at the standard for 53 to 73 is about structure. All right, the first 10 pages when he's with the Crystal Merchant, they jump in time. All right, and they structure that because he's with him for a year. All right, if they told that story of the entire year, that's like an entire book by itself, and that's not the purpose of the book. All right, so they jump forward a couple months and then eventually an entire year to one, let us know about Santiago's ideas and how he's able to help the Crystal Merchant, and then two, just to advance the plot along, and so it goes at a steady pace. So instead of taking a whole book, he takes 10 pages. All right, so remember that one, and it'll help you 53 to 73. They get to know each other, obviously, through this year. Um, Part of his religion, the Crystal Merchant, is he needs to travel to Mecca, and that's kind of like his big goal. It'd be really expensive, but being a businessman, he probably has the money that he could do it, but he doesn't because he's kind of afraid of what's going to happen if he does. All right, we talked about that as one of the obstacles. It's like this is my big goal in life. Like he's got the crystal selling down. That's not really a challenge anymore. And so traveling to Mecca is, but if he does that, then he doesn't know what else he's going to do, what he's going to look forward to. So he keeps saying one day, and pushing it off. Going along with the obstacles from the introduction as well, the fear of defeats we will meet along the path. A lot of people don't try because of that. Defeats and mistakes are unavoidable. They're unavoidable for Santiago. They're unavoidable for us. Um, they say in the introduction, secret of life, fall 7 times, get up 8. Santiago, especially, once he got to Africa, ran into a ton of challenges, and that's why he's with the Crystal Merchant right now, is because, he was flat broke. So even though he had no money, even though it all got stolen, even though he's, struggling a little bit, he's learning about persistence, keep trying, and in the end, that's going to be helpful as he follows his personal legend. So on page 63, Santiago decides, I've worked here long enough, I have enough money. And the Crystal Merchant introduces us to the word maktub, and it's going to come along later in the book too. And rough translation, it means it is written. So kind of like this is how it was supposed to be. So Santiago sits down, is like, hey, I'm going to leave. And the Crystal Merchant kind of saw it coming. So he's like, okay, that's fine. And Santiago is like, business has been really well over the last year. You have enough money to go to Mecca. And he's like, I'm not going to go to Mecca. That. And Santiago's like, okay, well, I'm going to go back home and buy my sheep. And Crystal Merchant is like, I don't think you are. All right. I think I've known you well enough to know that isn't what you really want to do. Even though Santiago can now have like twice the amount of sheep, he speaks a whole new language, so he can, sell to more people. He can buy a license to import things, so he could have a really good business going on if he goes back to Spain. But the Crystal Merchant doesn't think that's what he's going to do. And obviously, that's not what he decides to do. He decides to follow his personal legend, which remember is to Egypt by the pyramids. Right? And to get across those 2,600 miles, you have to go straight through the desert. You definitely cannot do it alone because there's no way for you to carry enough food and water for yourself. So you have to go with a caravan. Luckily for him, a caravan was going like that day, basically. And so he was able to join that. And he meets the Englishman. Who is the Englishman looking for? He's looking for a specific person, the alchemist. All right. So this is the first time the word the alchemist has been brought up in the book. The Englishman is going to look for an alchemist. He wants to learn how to turn gold or metal into gold. All right. That is his goal. All right. As they start to travel, we see two distinct learning styles on how they are learning and how they perceive the world. The Englishman has his nose stuck in a book all the time. He's trying to learn more and more and more. So when he meets the alchemist, he'll be smart enough.
Why is your mic so cold?
I don't know.
My last class was cold. I don't hear it freezing.
Sorry. All right. So he has his nose stuck in a book, trying to learn as much as he can. Santiago, on the other hand, is observing everything. All right. He's observing the movement of the caravan. He's observing the desert. He's observing the sky. And he feels like he's learning a lot about the world in general, basically, through this. So they're talking, they kind of compare notes, and they're like, hey, let's switch. So Santiago starts reading books, and the Englishman starts observing. And they both quickly find that they get bored with the other way. All right? I think it's on the next one. Yes. The other thing that goes along with this is the Emerald Tablet. All right, this is part of the alchemy aspect of it. They say there's an Emerald Tablet with just a few lines on it that has the secret to everything you need to know. All right, so the Englishman's idea behind this is since it's only a few lines, it has to be super complicated. So that's why he's reading all the books. Santiago, on the other hand, it's like if it's only a few lines, it must be something pretty simple. All right. If it's only 3 lines, it's got to be pretty simple. The gypsy woman back at the beginning said it's the simple things in life that are the most extraordinary. Only wise men are able to understand them. And so that's kind of where Santiago's coming from. All right. Now, this question is like I could make you answer it, and there's no right or wrong question or answer, but who is right, the Englishman or Santiago? Is it more simple or is it more complicated? All right, and that goes to a lot of things in life. How do we look at it? Are we making it too complicated, or is it something that we can easily fix? As they're going through the desert, he also meets the camel driver. And I like the camel driver because he's a really simple guy. He's very wise. He's very good at what he does. All right, but he has a very simple philosophy. If it's time to eat, you stop and eat. If it's time to go to bed, you stop and go to bed. So this whole time, their first stop is going to be this oasis. And the oasis is safety for them, essentially. Not only physically, but there's fresh water, there's fresh food, there's new people. Just everybody's looking forward to this. So one night, they're traveling. They see the oasis on the outskirts or the horizon. All right. So Santiago is like, it's right there. Why don't we just go now? And the camel driver is like, because it's time to go to bed. All right. So the camel driver has the philosophy, take care of your business that you need to take care of right away, and then kind of take step by step to reach your goal. So they make it to the oasis, and the Englishman is super happy because he hears this is where the alchemist is. All right, so they're trying to find the alchemist. The Englishman's kind of being a wimp about it and making Santiago ask everybody. And at first, he asks the woman in a black dress, and she's like, "I can't talk to you. I'm married." All right, so she's like, "Don't talk to anybody in a black dress." So he's like, "All right." So they're hanging out. Finally, someone comes to get water that's not in a black dress. Her name is Fatima. Santiago sees her, and it's love at first sight for him. All right, he falls really hard. So they ask her, kind of describe what they're looking for, and she's like, "Oh yeah, there's a guy like that in the kind of the south end of the oasis." And this is important because as Santiago is following his personal legend, remember he's supposed to follow the good omens. So the fact that the woman that he thinks he's in love with was able to point him in the right direction is a good thing. All right, a good sign. So at that point, the Englishman takes off to go find the alchemist, and Santiago keeps hanging out at this well every day so he can see Fatima for 10, 15 minutes while she fills up her water jugs every day. So the Englishman finally finds the alchemist. Remember, the Englishman has been studying and studying and studying for years. All right, so he finally finds the alchemist, and we don't get the exact conversation, but I assume it's something like, I've read every book that I can. How do I turn this metal into gold? What does the alchemist tell him to do? You didn't get that far yet? Okay. He told me he has to try. All right, so he's read all this stuff, but he hasn't tried. All right, so at this point, the author's telling us, that it's important that if you want to do something, you actually have to try to do it. Because, talking about doing it isn't going to help you. It's okay to research, obviously, a little bit, but in the end, you got to take that first step and try doing it. All right, the last slide here. Santiago, I was talking about earlier how he likes to observe the desert. So he's out there observing the desert. He sees some hawks flying around. They start fighting, and he has a vision. All right. So the oasis, like I said, is a safe point. There's no weapons allowed. There's a war going on between tribes in the desert, but everybody leaves the oasis alone. Right. He has a vision that the oasis is going to be attacked. All right. So now he's concerned about what to do. He asks the camel driver, like, "Hey, this is the vision I have." And the camel driver says, "You should really tell the elders what your vision was, and so then they can decide what to do." And that's where we leave off on page 107. All right. So if you haven't gotten this far yet, keep reading. There's assignments in Canvas that go along with them. And 53 to 73 has the standard question attached. So make sure to do those. Also, the reason it's important to keep going with the reading is that Santiago's character development presentation, that it's going to be due Friday of next week. All right, so each section you need to be filling that out. We will work on that in class next week some, but if you're super far behind, it's hard to get caught up. So if you are super far behind, remember you can listen. If you go to Pages, The Alchemist, it has everything listed, page numbers, and the link to YouTube and what the timestamps are or whatever for the listening. Just do what you can to get caught up. Any questions over The Alchemist right now? All right. What? That's not about The Alchemist. All right, go ahead and go to Canvas. And we're going to finish up 3 different standards today, hopefully. So if you're all caught up with these 3 assignments or these 3 standards, these are going to be the last ones for them. If you need to go back and fix one or do one, that's cool too. But RN 2.1 plus 2, because we're covering 2 standards in it. Want to get into college? Find that one. So RN 2.1 plus 2, want to get into college. This one is slightly different than what we've done in the past for standard wise. There's a short article to read, and then there are 4 multiple choice questions. Usually when I'm looking at standards, I don't do multiple choice. I usually do writing. This one is going to be multiple choice. So you need to pay special attention to questions 1, 2, and 4. Right in the question, I put which standard I'm looking at. So make sure to pay special attention to that. If you miss question 3, life goes on. But if you miss 1, 2, or 4, you need to retake it. All right. If you miss it, it's going to tell you that you missed it. When you hit submit, it won't tell you the right answer, but you'll at least know that you need to go back and fix it. All right. Does that make sense? So you're going to read, pay special attention to 1, 2, and 4. When you're finished, RN 4.1 fallacy and ads, it's just like the last one that you did Wednesday of last week or Thursday of last week for e-learning. We're going to watch 5 ads and tell me which example it is from the fallacies. I have the 5 fallacies you're going to use. I have the definitions. You're going to use each one time. If you get stuck, let me know. For the first one that you did, if you didn't get them all right, you can check easily. If you just go to grades, find it, it's out of 25. If you didn't get a 25 out of 25, you missed at least one. So go through, fix it, and you'll be golden. Last night, I emailed you some stuff that you can work on for standards, but is there anybody that would prefer the sticky note? I couldn't think of the word sticky note with it. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anybody else? And if you change your mind later, just let me know. All right. So you should be on the RN 2.1 plus 2. Go ahead and get that done. And then from there, we can work on the rest. All right. I'll take attendance and then I'll be roaming around.